Hi YouTube and welcome back to my channel. Today is Vlogmas day 12. Sorry that yesterday's video was a little bit of a mess. I ran out of room on my SD card and then I forgot to put up the picture of Richard Dean Anderson that I promised, so I apologize about that. If you go back to the video yesterday, if you missed it, there's a link to the image in the description down below. They don't allow us to add annotations to videos anymore, so oops, I can't make corrections on the screen, so sorry about that. Anyway, today, as I promised, I was going to talk about some of my favorite movies. Yesterday was about my favorite TV shows, today more about movies. And growing up, and I've mentioned this ad nauseum, yes, I was poor. My family was poor, so we didn't go to movies. So most of the movies I got to see, I had to wait 3 years until they finally made it to broadcast television. And then I got to see the edited version with commercials. Woohoo. So that's how I saw a lot of movies, like all the original Star Wars trilogy I saw that way. And I didn't get to see the unedited version until early 90s when I finally got the trilogy on VHS tape, and that was kind of cool. And I actually still have those. It's the original VHS of the movies before any changes were made where they added Jabba the Hutt into the first movie and all that kind of stuff. So this is the original cut of the original movies that we all saw back in 70s and 80s and stuff. So yeah, obviously I loved Star Wars. But growing up, like I said, a lot of movies were on TV, and to be perfectly honest, I don't remember how many of these were ever shown in the theaters originally. A lot of them were old movies. I loved movies like Sound of Music. And there was a movie called Gigi that my childhood nickname was Gigi because of that movie. And the big reason for that is, so the character Gigi grows up, her mom is an opera singer or something, and she gets knocked up. She's never gets married to the person who knocks her up, and so mom moves back in with her parents, or at least with her mom, and Gigi's grandmother raises her, and while the mom is off, and you never see the mom, she's always in her room singing or whatnot. And so that kind of epitomizes a little bit of my childhood growing up. My mom kind of just hung out in her room most of the time when she wasn't working, and it was just primarily my grandmother. My grandfather was there until I was 11. He passed away when I was 11, and then it was just my grandmother and myself, with my mom just kind of hiding out in her room most of the time. The part of the movie Gigi that I did not experience was the handsome and wealthy gentleman caller who falls in love with me and sweeps me off my feet and takes me away from all my worries and cares. Yeah, that didn't happen. Instead, I worked my ass off, several jobs trying to get through college and get a good job. And back when actually working your ass off and going through college did lead to a good job that, didn't lead you to mountains of debt and everything else. I think I was probably part of the last sliver of the Gen X generation that was able to get away with that before everything just kind of went to heck in a handbasket, from everything I've heard, from what's going on today with the tuition rates and salaries not going up and everything else. But anyway, we're getting off the topic of movies, aren't we? So let me rein myself back in. So yes, so I grew up watching a lot of the old 1950s, 1960s musical movies on TV. With Singing in the Rain and all that stuff, so I loved a lot of those. But I also loved watching any of the movies that we did get on broadcast TV. The Star Wars trilogy, I loved those. And when the Star Trek movies came out and made it to TV, so the original Star Trek, and then of course Star Trek Without the Voyage Home. Actually, Star Trek The Voyage Home I think I did get to see in the theater. I think we were in a position where we actually had some money. And the first movie I ever saw in a actual live movie theater, well, not live, but in an actual movie theater was Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was 10 years old. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know if that was an appropriate movie for 10 years old. The whole Nazis with their faces melting off, I'm actually wish I hadn't seen that at that age, but I went with, because my family still couldn't afford to go to the movies, but my grandmother was the godmother to my mom's friend Sandy's son, if that makes any sense. So my mom and this girl named Sandy were good friends in high school, and when Sandy had her son, she named my grandmother the godmother of her son. I don't know why it was my grandmother, not my mom, but whatever. And they lived outside of Chicago, and every summer they would take my grandmother and me out, and we'd spend a weekend out in the suburbs, and we'd be like roasting marshmallows, because they lived out in the boonies, and they always had a bonfire. We could roast marshmallows and churn ice cream, and the son had an Atari, so I got to play video games, and so that was all kind of fun. And the weird thing is that Sandy was my mom's friend from high school, but she always invited my grandmother and myself and not my mom. I still don't understand how that worked, but whatever. But she took me and my grandmother and her son, Scott, I think his name was. So the four of us went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that was my first official movie in a movie theater experience. And it was pretty cool, and I liked it. Even though the movie was a bit scary. And then, yeah, so I know the first 3 Star Trek movies I saw on television, but I do believe Star Trek 4 was the first one of the Star Trek movies that I got to see actually in a theater. And, let's see, Little Mermaid was another one of the early ones I got to see in a movie theater, and Jurassic Park. I enjoyed all of those movies and things. I don't tend to see a lot of movies. So a lot of people, have you seen this movie? Have you seen that movie? And I will say 90% of the time my answer will be, nope, they haven't seen it. I prefer TV shows. I prefer things that keep going for a long time. I don't like it's 2 hours and it's over and done with and that's it. So movies that have more than one in them, like the Star Trek movies and the Star Wars movies, I love those because it's kind of almost like a TV series. It is a series of movies, and it's the same thing with books for me. I love series of books. My favorite series is the Shannara books, which the Chronicles of Shannara are based on or are inspired from. And the Shannara books, there's like 30 books in that series at this point. And so I'm in book heaven with that series. But yeah, so I like things that if I invest time into enjoying myself and falling in love with it, with a world, I get very sad and get a little bit of a withdrawal if I like it's 2 hours and that's it. So there's a lot of movies that I really liked that I wish there had been more of, like Hook. I love the movie Hook with Robin Williams. I love a lot of Robin Williams movies, and at the end of the movie, it's like I didn't want to leave that world. And so I love immersing myself in fantasy worlds and fictional worlds and that kind of thing. And that stems back from my childhood, just growing up and suffering from a lot of abuse, suffering from a lot of bullying, suffering from the fact that we didn't have money, so I didn't always have food to eat. And so escapism was a big thing for me. And so the more immersed I could become in a world, the more I enjoyed it. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love series of books, and then TV series, and then, you know, the same thing with movies. And so I'm loving the MCU, the Marvel, the MCU, Marvel something universe. I forget what the C stands for. Marvel Comics Universe. Thank you. I was thanking my brain for remembering that. As you get older, it's, I swear, Swiss cheese for brains. But yes, so I'm loving all these. I just saw Thor Ragnarok. I loved it. It was definitely the funniest of all the Thor movies. definitely up there with Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of humor and stuff, and I really enjoyed it, and so I'm loving having this the Marvel Comics universe and having all these different movies that are all kind of somewhat interrelated with each other, and you kind of get to immerse yourself and enjoy this world. And even though it's different characters starring at different times, and then sometimes you've got the Avengers and you have all of them together, but you know, it's still all the same world, it's the same universe, it's the same reality, and you can kind of continue to be immersed in that. And it's one of the reasons why with the TV shows I was talking about yesterday with all the superhero ones, and the fact that not only are there multiple TV series, but that they cross over and they relate to each other. And so, yeah, for someone like me who likes to get immersed into a world, that's just kind of like TV and movie heaven for me. So that's definitely my cup of tea and stuff. In terms of, let's see, other favorite movies, Lord of the Rings. I really enjoyed those, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's, you know, wasn't as faithful to the books, and like, I thought they did a fairly decent adaptation or interpretation of the books. Yeah, they left out Tom Bombadil and that kind of thing, but to be perfectly honest, Lord of the Rings is definitely up there in terms of movies that I actually preferred over the books. I never enjoyed Tolkien's verbosity, for lack of a better word. He gets so nitty gritty into the details and into the description with his books that you kind of, I don't know, it kind of pulls me out of the story eventually, where it's like, okay, come on, get on with the story already. I don't care that the spoon was made of oak wood instead of cherry wood, or, you know, I mean, he gets that level of ridiculous detail with a few things. Not with spoons, but that's just the first example I could think of. But he just gets to a real ridiculous level of detail, to the point where when I first tried to read Tolkien when I was younger, it's not that it was a difficult read, because I was a fairly advanced reader, it was just tedious. It was very tedious. And so I never finished reading them, and I actually got interested in reading them in the first place because there were the Rankin Bass movies. Rankin Bass did a Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies in cartoon form, and I don't know if they were ever in the theater, if they were just made for TV movies, but I watched those and it got me interested in fantasy, and so I went to get the books and I tried to read them, and like I said, they were very, very tedious to read and I didn't enjoy it. Then my mom introduced me to The Sword of Shannara from Terry Brooks. Now, The Sword of Shannara, I know a lot of people say it's a ripoff of Lord of the Rings, but to be perfectly honest, it's a better story in my mind. Well, at the very least, I mean, you get the entire adventure in a single book instead of spread across these 3 books, and you kind of stick to the action without having all this extra description and everything all over the place. So I enjoyed that better. So once I read The Sword of Shannara, and then it goes on to the Elfstones of Shannara and the Wish Song of Shannara as the first trilogy. And of course the Elfstones and the Wish Song are very, very different from Lord of the Rings, whereas the sword is... there are parallels with Lord of the Rings. There's absolutely no denying that. I don't think even Terry Brooks will deny that. But I still think it's a good story, and I still think it's a better story. In my personal opinion, I enjoyed The Sword of Shannara much more as a reader than I did Lord of the Rings. Not saying that Lord of the Rings isn't a good story, there's just too much extra stuff, and that's what the movies took out. They took out a lot of that extra stuff and just stuck to the core of the story, and I thought that they did a really good job with it. And with The Hobbit, they actually added stuff to it, because it was, you know, they took a single book and then expanded it to 3 movies, so that it should have been like 3 books. And what they did is they threw in some stuff from the Silmarillion, which is, you know, additional works that Tolkien had written in regards to that whole world and everything, Middle Earth and everything. So I actually didn't mind that either. I know some people complained about that, but I really enjoyed what they did with both of those trilogies of movies, and I thought the movies were better than the books. Now when it comes to Shannara, there's now a TV series, and it is a complete, it's an adaptation, it's more of an inspired by than it is following the books. It's not following the books. The first season kind of followed the Elfstones of Shannara, but then season 2 is completely off script, is not following the books at all. It's taking elements of all of these different books and kind of weaving a completely new story out of it. And I actually kind of almost prefer that because of the way Terry Brooks wrote his novels. And he does a lot of generation and time gaps. I mean, he can jump a generation or two, or sometimes, 500 years or 1,000 years between trilogies. And so that makes it difficult to set as a TV series or as movies or whatnot, because you're going to have completely new cast, completely new characters, the entire changes around them and everything else, and that could get really confusing. It makes sense in the books, but as a TV series have to be more fast-paced, and it wouldn't make sense with those jumps and gaps and things and different casts and characters. And so what they're doing to try and keep some continuity from season to season, I think makes a lot more sense with that. So, I'm going from talking about my favorite movies to TV and books and everything else, aren't I? But as you can see, sci-fi and fantasy are my favorite types of movies. I don't like horror sci-fi though, so like Alien and movies like that, I generally tend to stay away from. I loved Contact in terms of sci-fi movies from Carl Sagan. Now Carl Sagan's one of my favorite authors. I love all of his nonfiction books. Contact was a good book. I loved the movie as well, and that's another one where I actually liked, I think, the movie a little bit better than the book as well. Trying to nail down like a single favorite, I don't think I have a single favorite particular movie. I just kind of love immersing myself in different movie universes. The Star Trek universe, the Star Wars universe, I've really been enjoying the new Star Trek movies as well, with the new cast and everything, and I like how they make it work within the Star Trek universe with the time changes and going into an alternate reality and alternate timeline and everything. Some old fans complain about that. I actually don't mind it one bit. I actually kind of, to me, like, okay, that makes sense. I'll go with it, and I'll sit back and enjoy it. And I think that all the actors that have taken on the roles of the classic characters have done a really good job with them. So, be that as it may, that's kind of what I enjoy when it comes to movies, and looking forward to the new Star Wars movies. I'm not gonna go to the opening day of The Last Jedi. I do want to see the movie. I tend to avoid opening day because it's just usually it's chaos and it's crowded and there's kids screaming and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait maybe a week or two and then kind of go a mid-afternoon matinee, so that I can kind of enjoy it without the crowds and the chaos and everything else. Because I just want to go and enjoy the movie and immerse myself in the experience without everything else going on around me. So anyhow, that's about it in terms of my thoughts on movies. What are your favorite movies and TV shows and that kind of thing? I should have asked that in yesterday's video. So leave me comments down below and let me know. Talk to me. I've got one person, hi again, but come on, more interaction here. I enjoy talking to people who watch my videos. Even if you have a criticism, I'll talk to you. All right, thanks for joining me. Until tomorrow, take care. Bye-bye.